Hey, I'm Lee Balcom, and I just jumped off a coaching call, and this person responded to me. I said, "Hey, tell me, why are we talking right now? What happened that we're talking now?" And what he told me is something that you're probably feeling also. He said his spouse finally said, "Enough is enough. I'm not seeing any changes. You keep telling me how you're going to change or how this is going to change, and nothing's changed. It's the same pattern, and I'm done." And so I started thinking about this because it comes up many times when I'm talking with people. You know something's going on in your marriage. You got problems in your marriage, and you know that. And you want to get to that marriage that you desperately think can be there, right? The one that you signed up for when you had that wedding. And this is the problem. I don't see people the first time they have a problem. You want to do that, but you've probably tried many times in the past to turn things around. You've probably promised to make changes. People don't go looking at videos on how to save their marriage the first time there's an argument, the first time there's a problem, the first time there's a crisis, because they think they already know what to do. And so they're going to step forward with what they think they know how to do. They're using their old tools to try to get to a new place. So many times, by the time I talk with somebody, or by the time they're watching my video or reading my books or using my system or one of my other programs, this isn't the first time the merry-go-round has gone round on their crisis. They have gone round and round and round and made promises after promises that have failed either because one, the other, or both have not been able to make a transformation. So what do? Because you want that marriage, but you've had these failed attempts. You need to first understand what's going on behind that. Most people recognize that change is tough. But what they miss is that we are constantly changing. Things are constantly changing. Relationships change and evolve along the way. Sometimes people decide that a relationship isn't worth it. My problem is, in a marriage, there's so much riding on this. You made a promise. I was just at a wedding very recently, this past weekend, and they did their traditional vows, which I really appreciate because there just isn't a lot of daylight to get between a couple when you listen to those vows. They promised to be faithful to each other and to keep everybody at a certain distance, a safe distance. It didn't mean that they were going to eliminate everybody from their lives and never have contact with anybody again. It meant that they were going to keep people safe and their spouse close. They also promised that they would stick together in good days and bad days, in sick days and healthy days, in rich days and poor days. Most couples go through those variations. So they've made a vow, and that vow creates the vessel that allows them to say, "Hey, we're in this for life, so let's build around that." And that's part of the problem with the marriage. Emotionally, you build around it, right? You create these connections that are deep and bonding. Physically, you do that same bonding and creating this tight bond together. Financially, you do that. You're creating, many people buy houses together or own property together. You do that financially. You create these vessels to carry your life through. You bring children often into the world, not always, but often you bring children into the world where they are ours to raise together. So all of these things create this vessel of the relationship that's very hard to pull apart. And then we don't track the fact that life is changing and needs new things from us. Who we were as a newly married couple, that's not who we need to be when we are along a few years, when we're parenting, when the kids leave, when we have difficult times in life, when all of these things require something else to come out of the relationship. And here's the thing, as much as people tell me they don't like change, They're living through change every single day. So what do you do? What do you do if you've made the promises, I'll change, or it'll change, will change? And it's fallen on deaf ears now because you've made those promises before. Oh, there are a couple of things. One is, I think that you stop talking about the change you're going to make. Just stop talking about it. I didn't say not to change. I said stop talking about it. Stop proclaiming how you're going to change, because that's what most people do. Oh, I promise I'll change. Just give me another chance. I'll change. Change. Be the change. Figure out how you need to change and make the changes. Is it hard? Sure. Are you going to need some new tools? Probably so, because you've always got to retool to get to a new place. You know, it's interesting to me how we lose track of that. Let's say I decide that I suddenly want to start a new career. Whole new career. I'm probably going to have to learn some new things. Probably going to go get some training on that. Probably going to learn some new tools and skills to take me to that next place. We seem to think that somehow in a marriage relationship, we'll just wing it, right? Parenting, we'll just wing it, right? And what often happens when you wing it is you get stuck into patterns and ruts because you don't know what else to do. To me, that is the root of most of the problems I see in relationships. I meet really nice people with really good intentions who don't have great relationships because they don't know how to retool. And so what ends up happening is they get wrapped up into these patterns that finally end up being conflict points and pain points in the relationship. And because of that, there's hurt now. There's resentment. There's regret. And we follow what I call the arc of disconnection. In another video, I'm going to go through every single stage in that arc so you know what happens, because there's an arc of connection that happens in every relationship. And if you master that, you can continue that. But for hurting relationships, there's the arc of connection that then arcs downward into disconnection. So we need to figure out how to get beyond that, to get out of that stuck point, to get to a new place. So that's what we're going to work on. But right now, we want to focus on that question, what do you do when you've made the promises? So the first thing we're going to do is not be talking about the changes we're going to make, but make them. The second thing is that you're going to not just make the little changes along the way, but the big transformational changes in your relationship. You're going to work towards being a we. That's a big thing that's often missing. That we are a team. We're in this together. That reality that can only happen in a marriage relationship. So that's a pivot point. You've got to have new tools to get to that place. You've also got to realize that, for ourselves, we need to be growing and changing. I once had a guy call me and say, could you please tell my wife I haven't changed? She keeps telling me I've changed. Could you please tell her I have not changed? And I said, if you have not changed, you've lost the opportunity of changing. I am not the person I was, at the beginning of my marriage. I'm not the person I was halfway through my marriage, 17 years ago. I'm not the person I was a decade ago or 5 years ago or a year ago or a month ago. We have chances of changing and growing all along. Are there parts of me, my core pieces, that are just part of my personality? Sure. And I've got to figure out how to manage those pieces so they don't get in my way. How do we know what those pieces are that get in our way? Well, life keeps showing it to us. A spouse is a great place to figure that out because they can tell us over the years when we've committed to be in that relationship, they can be honest and tell us what it is that we keep doing. But other places we get it too. Some people run from those relationships. A friend will say, you know what, you're too whatever, or you're so much this way. And we go, oh, that's just them. We go to a job and we get some performance reviews and they're like, oh, you do great here, but these other places, woo, we need to work on those. And you go, oh, that's just that job. I'll find a new one. But a spouse that we've committed to being with, it's a great mirror for us to go, what is it that I'm doing? I tend to be, to say it badly, stubborn. Positive spin on that is I have grit. And so those two things have gotten me through lots of difficult times in my life, helped me when I was growing up and had some learning disabilities, or have them, but I learned to cope with them and get beyond them. Helped me to get through some tougher times in my life when I could have walked away and missed an opportunity. So the question is, how can I make that work for me? Not how do I change it, but how do I make it work for me? So already we've now created two categories of things you might work on. One is the things you just need to change. The things that are getting you stuck. Maybe you've become too grumpy and disagreeable, and your anger comes out too quickly. Maybe you find yourself pushing others away and things like that you really do just need to make a core change. Then there are the things that you need to figure out how to make them work for you. I can be stubborn. I can have grit. Stubborn is often what happens when you refuse to find a better way. Grit is when you stick with something because you're willing to find the way through to something better. It's the same coin. But can I use the more valuable side of that coin rather than the one that may be causing problems for me? So two categories. One are those things that you recognize, maybe you don't like to admit, but somewhere within you, or you can even ask your friends, tell me what are the things where I keep stumbling. If you and your spouse are at a not good enough place to ask, tell me what it is that I keep falling into. And then there are the places that are more about you, that are not going to change, that you're going to have to figure out how to make them work for you. Two categories. One is, how do I transform to the better? The other is, how do I just change that? Okay. So we've already mapped out that you're not going to stand at the top of the hill and scream about I'll change or it'll change. You're going to be the change. The second one is, you're going to change, either transforming the things you need them to work better, or get away from the things that are really getting you stuck. The next piece is about consistency of those changes. Because what often happens is that people are busy trying to fake it, trying to convince a spouse. So when they tell me, I'm walking on eggshells now because my spouse is upset about how I do something, walking on eggshells tells me they haven't changed something. They're trying to pretend to do something. So we often talk in therapy about first order change and second order change. First order change is something that doesn't really go very deep. I'm changing my habits, right? So maybe I have some issue, and instead of doing that, I bite my tongue, and it's still going on internally, right? Those thought process is still going on. Nothing's really changed, actually. I'm just acting like there's been a change. The second one is there's a change because I realize there has to be a change, and it's a real change. First order change, surface stuff. Make it look good. Try to fool my spouse into thinking I've changed. The second one is transformed. I have been changed. So consistency, and let me just say, we know this, right? We know people who have tried to fool us by telling us they've changed that haven't. And the way we know the difference over time is over time. Are they really changed? That's the proof. If your spouse is not seeing you consistently having changed, your spouse is going to recognize you're doing that fooling thing. It's not deep enough. It's got to be a real change. So let's just go with those three things right now. Number one, that you don't proclaim your change. Number two, that you change some things that really need changing and transform the stuck points in your personality. So it's not so much that you're getting rid of them, but you're making them work for you, not getting in the way. And that third one is proving consistency. You prove consistency over time. That's how your spouse will go, something is different here. Now, you may need a framework for that, right? And that's part of what I've tried to create, frameworks for people to follow. I've got a number of them behind me, and there's that in my system and that in my other programs, because what you need is kind of the GPS of this, right? You need new tools and you need new direction, and that's what we try to provide. If I can be of assistance, check it out at savethemarriage.com. That's savethemarriage.com. This is Lee Balcom. I'm pulling for you to help you transform your marriage into something you both would like. I wish you the best as you continue to work to save your marriage.